Billionaire yells at Waitress. She says one sentence that freezes the entire restaurant. 3 seconds after Marcela Duarte spoke those 12 words to billionaire Dorian Kessler, someone pressed a record on their phone. By morning, her life was shattered, scholarship cancelled, student loans accelerated, a shredded uniform delivered to her door with a threatening note. Your career, your reputation, your security, all is easily torn apart. The single mother had committed an unforgivable sin in America. A woman who served plates had demanded dignity from a man who owned buildings. Now a tech mogul worth $18 billion was determined to destroy her, until another billionaire entered the game. "Look me up," Rashad Beaumont told her. "Then remember, David beat Goliath." Quick question before we dive in. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And hey, if you're curious already, hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. Alright, let's jump in. Marcela Duarte's fingers trembled as she pinned her name tag to her crisp white blouse. 6 years at the Armand, and her stomach still knotted before every shift. Tonight felt different though, heavier. She glanced at her phone, a text from Mrs. Alvarez showing Mateo beaming over completed homework. Her son's gap-toothed smile steadied her hands. Table 12 needs another bottle of the Chateau Margaux, Remy, the maitre d', announced with his trademark Parisian severity. And they're asking for you specifically, Marcela. She frowned. Me? Are you sure? We. The Kessler party. The name rippled through the staff room like an electric current. Dorian Kessler, tech mogul, venture capitalist, the billionaire whose face dominated financial magazines. Known for building empires and destroying careers with equal efficiency. Why would he ask for me? Marcela whispered. Sophie, another waitress, squeezed her arm. Maybe he loved your service last time? I've never served him before. Well, don't keep him waiting, Remy said, checking his gold watch. The rich aren't known for patience. As Marcela navigated through the dimly lit dining room, conversations about hedge funds and summer homes in the Hamptons washed over her. The Armand catered to those who wore wealth like a second skin, while she wore orthopedic shoes to ease the pain of standing for 12-hour shifts. Table 12 occupied the restaurant's most coveted spot, a corner alcove offering both privacy and a view of Central Park. Dorian Kessler sat with his back to the wall, surveying the room like a general assessing a battlefield. His tailored Brioni suit probably cost more than her annual rent. Good evening, Mr. Kessler. I'm Marcela, and I'll be your server tonight. Her practiced smile felt tight across her face. Kessler barely glanced up from his phone. 3 other men in equally expensive suits sat around him, laughing too loudly at something on a tablet. Finally, Kessler muttered, setting his phone down. We've been waiting for that Margaux. My apologies, sir. I'll open it right away. As she worked the corkscrew, Marcela noticed the men staring at her, not her face but her hands. The slight calluses, the chipped nail polish she hadn't had time to fix. She felt suddenly, acutely aware of the power imbalance in the room. You don't look like you belong here, Kessler said abruptly. Sir. At the Armand. You have the look of someone who should be serving at a diner, not uncorking 5-figure bottles of wine. The cork came free with a soft pop. Marcela's face burned, but her voice remained steady. Would you like to taste it, sir? One of the other men snickered. Dorian's just saying you seem out of place in fine dining. It's meant as an observation, not an insult. But the curl of Kessler's lip told a different story. 15 minutes later, Marcela was describing the chef's special when Kessler cut her off. Your accent, it's distracting. Where are you from? I was born in Queens, sir. But your parents? El Salvador. She shifted her weight, conscious of the heaviness in her feet after her morning shift at the cafe. Ah. He nodded as if this confirmed something. And this is your career choice. The question hung in the air, dripping with judgment. "I'm studying accounting part-time," she found herself explaining, though she owed him no explanation. "Working 2 jobs to cover tuition and support my son." "Admirable," he said, in a tone that suggested the opposite. Though one might question the wisdom of single parenthood when financial stability is clearly an issue. The nearby tables grew quieter. Someone cleared their throat uncomfortably. "The Chilean sea base comes with a saffron risotto," Marcella continued professionally, despite the burning in her chest. "And the dry-aged ribeye." "I asked you a question," Kessler interrupted. "Do you think it's responsible to bring a child into the world when you're serving tables?" 20 feet away, Amélie Roche, the Armand's owner, emerged from her office, sensing the shift in her restaurant's atmosphere. She hovered near the bar, watching. "My son is my personal business, sir." Marcella's voice was soft but firm. "Now, about tonight's specials." "You know what's special?" Kessler's voice rose. "Merit. Earning your place. Not expecting handouts or sympathy because of your circumstances." Several diners were now openly watching. A young woman at a nearby table had her phone tilted in their direction. "I'll give you a moment to decide on your order," Marcella said, turning to leave. "No." Kessler's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not painfully, but with enough pressure to stop her. "We've been waiting too long already. I want the ribeye, rare, and I want a server who understands their place in the hierarchy of this establishment." He released her, and Marcella stepped back, conscious of her heart thundering against her ribs. "Meaning." "Meaning," Kessler said, loud enough now that half the restaurant could hear, "that in any functioning society, there are those who serve and those who are served. Those who build empires and those who carry plates." He looked around, apparently enjoying his audience. "It's not complicated. Know your worth." The restaurant had gone eerily quiet. Even the kitchen staff had paused in the doorway, watching. Marcella thought of Matteo, of the promise she'd made him that morning as she braided his hair, that nobody would ever make them feel small again. She straightened her shoulders. "Is there something wrong with the service I've provided, Mr. Kessler?" His laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Besides the slow pace, the presumptuous attitude, and the obvious chip on your shoulder? You clearly don't belong in a place of this caliber. Perhaps the manager should reconsider who they place in front of VIP clients." The words hit like physical blows. Marcella felt every eye in the restaurant on her, the wealthy patrons, her fellow servers, Amélie watching from across the room. At that moment, something shifted inside her. She thought of all the times she'd smiled through insults, of the crushing student loan debt, of Matteo asking why she looked so tired every morning, of her mother, who had cleaned houses for families like Kessler's, always with dignity. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the hushed restaurant. "You can buy the meal, sir, but you'll never buy respect." The silence that followed was absolute. Not a fork clinked against a plate. Not a single chair creaked. The entire restaurant froze. What happens when the powerless speak truth to power? Does the world listen, or does it punish the messenger? Have you ever witnessed someone stand up to a bully? What happened next? Dorian Kessler's face underwent a fascinating transformation. Shock, followed by disbelief, then a darkening anger that changed his handsome features into something almost grotesque. "What did you just say to me?" His voice was dangerously quiet. Before Marcella could respond, a slow, deliberate clapping began from the far corner of the restaurant. A silver-haired woman in pearls, nodding appreciatively. Then another table joined in. And another. The applause spread like a wave, punctuated by a few whistles and murmured bravos. Kessler's companions shifted uncomfortably. One checked his watch. Another suddenly became fascinated with a pattern on his napkin. Ms. Duarte. Amélie Roche had materialized beside them, her French Creole accent more pronounced than usual, a tell Marcella recognized as stress. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes," Kessler snapped. "Your waitress just insulted me. I want her fired. Immediately." The applause had died down, but the tension remained, crackling like static electricity. Amelie turned to Marcella, her expression unreadable. "What happened?" Before Marcella could speak, a woman at the next table leaned over. "That man," she pointed at Kessler, "has been belittling her for the past 15 minutes. She finally stood up for herself." "After I spent $16,000 on dinner last month," Kessler said, "I expect a certain standard of service, not insolence from the help." The word help hung in the air like a slur. "Perhaps," Amelie said carefully, "we could discuss this in my office, Mr. Kessler?" "There's nothing to discuss. Either she goes, or I do. And I bring a lot more value to this establishment than some waitress with an attitude problem." Marcella felt a curious sense of calm descend over her. The fear that had gripped her moments ago, of losing her job, of not making rent, of disappointing Matteo, receded like an outgoing tide. "Ms. Roche," she said, "I apologize for the disruption. If you'd like my resignation—" "That won't be necessary," Amelie interrupted, surprising everyone. She turned to Kessler, steel beneath her polite smile. "Mr. Kessler, the Armand values all its patrons. We also value our staff. If you find yourself unable to treat our team with basic courtesy, perhaps we are not the right establishment for your dining needs." Kessler's jaw literally dropped. "Are you refusing me service?" "Not at all. I'm merely suggesting that mutual respect is the foundation of any relationship, including that between a restaurant and its clientele." One of Kessler's companions tugged at his sleeve. "Dorian, let's just go. Morton's is just down the block." But Kessler shook him off, his eyes never leaving Marcella's face. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," he said quietly. "I could buy this building tomorrow and turn it into a parking lot." The threat hung in the air, palpable and raw. "You probably could," Marcella acknowledged. "But you'd still be the man who publicly humiliated a waitress because it made you feel powerful." Someone gasped. Amelie's eyes widened, but Marcella continued, her voice steady. "And I would still be the woman who served you with dignity until you made that impossible." A phone chimed, the distinct sound of a social media notification. Then another. And another. Glances were exchanged across the restaurant as people checked their devices. "It's trending," a young man announced from the bar area, holding up his phone. Hashtag "You can't buy decency." Someone posted a video of the whole thing. Kessler's face drained of color as he reached for his own phone. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, scrolling rapidly. He stopped, staring at his screen. "Who recorded this? Who gave you permission to record me?" No one answered. The young woman who had been filming earlier had mysteriously disappeared to the restroom. Kessler stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. "You'll be hearing from my attorneys," he announced to the room at large. "All of you. Filming without consent, defamation, harassment." "Mr. Kessler," Amelie interjected calmly, "New York is a one-party consent state for recording conversations. And truth is an absolute defense against defamation." His face contorted. "You have no idea who you're messing with. I destroyed better restaurants than this over a bad amuse-bouche." He threw his napkin on the table and stormed toward the exit, his entourage scrambling to follow. At the door, he turned back, pointing directly at Marcella. "This isn't over," he called across the now silent restaurant. "Not by a long shot." The door slammed behind him with a force that rattled the crystal glasses on nearby tables. For a moment, no one moved. Then, like a dam breaking, conversation flooded back into the room, excited, animated discussions peppered with phrases like "Did you see his face?" and "About time someone stood up to him." Marcella's legs suddenly felt unable to support her weight. She grabbed the back of a chair, steadying herself. "You should sit down," Amelie said, guiding her to an empty service station. Remy, bring Ms. Duarte some water. I'm so sorry, Marcella whispered. I never meant to cause a scene. Don't apologize, Amelie replied firmly. Not for this. She nodded toward the dining room, where patrons were raising glasses in Marcella's direction. An elderly man actually stood and bowed. What happens now? Marcella asked, fear creeping back in. Kessler's threat echoed in her mind. She thought of Matteo, of their tiny apartment, of how precarious their stability truly was. Amelie's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her eyebrows rising toward her hairline. Now, she said. Now things get interesting. She showed Marcella the screen. The video of her confrontation with Kessler had already garnered over 20,000 views. Comments poured in by the second. Asterisk, this is the most satisfying thing I've seen all year. Asterisk. Asterisk, that waitress is my new hero. Asterisk. Asterisk, Dorian Kessler is exactly the entitled jerk everyone in tech says he is. Asterisk. But it was the banner headline that made Marcella's breath catch. Speaking truth to power, waitress stands up to billionaire bully. The internet moves quickly, Amelie observed dryly. For better or worse. By the time Marcella's shift ended 3 hours later, the video had been viewed over 1 million times. Hashtag respect workers and hashtag you can't buy decency were trending nationally. Her phone had 17 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize, and her modest social media accounts had exploded with friend requests and messages. She walked home faster than usual, jumping at shadows, half expecting Kessler or his representatives to emerge from the darkness. When she reached their 5th-floor walk-up, Mrs. Alvarez met her at the door with wide eyes. Marcella, you're famous. They're showing you on the news. Shoo, please, Marcella whispered, glancing toward the bedroom where Matteo slept. I don't want him to know yet. Know what? Came a sleepy voice. Matteo stood in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, his Spider-Man pajamas rumpled. Mama, why are you on TV? It's a long story, Mijo, she said, gathering him into her arms, breathing in his familiar scent of soap and sleep warm. Nothing for you to worry about. But as she tucked him back into bed, Marcella's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, you humiliated me in public. Now I'll return the favor. Hope you're ready for what comes next. DK asterisk. She stared at the message, her heart pounding in her ears. How had he gotten her number? What did he mean by what comes next? The David versus Goliath reality of her situation crashed down on her. What had she done? The power imbalance between them suddenly felt like a chasm. He was a billionaire with unlimited resources. She was a waitress with $143 in her checking account and a child to protect. But as she gazed at Matteo's peaceful face, Marcella made a silent promise. Whatever Kessler had planned, she would face it with the same dignity she'd shown tonight. Because some lessons were worth teaching, even when the cost was steep. What she couldn't know was just how steep that cost would be, or how completely her life was about to change. Asterisk, what would you risk to stand up for your dignity? Would you have the courage to face someone with unlimited power and resources? Asterisk. If you've made it this far, this story moved you, and that means it matters. Please subscribe, like and share now, my lovely viewers. Your support helps us share stories that need to be told. Someone out there is waiting to hear the next one. Morning arrived with a thunderstorm of notifications. Marcella's phone vibrated off her nightstand, clattering to the floor at 5:17 a.m. By the time she shuffled into the kitchen to make Matteo's breakfast, 3 news vans were parked outside their building. Mama, why are those people looking at our window? Matteo asked, peering through the blinds as he munched his cereal. They're just confused, Mijo. Don't worry about them. She gently pulled him away. Hurry now, or we'll be late for school. Getting through the reporters required Mrs. Alvarez's help, the elderly woman leading them down the back stairs while loudly scolding the vultures for harassing a working mother. Marcella kept Matteo's hoodie pulled up, shielding his face as they hurried to the subway. "Are you in trouble?" he asked on the train, his dark eyes solemn. The question pierced her heart. "No, honey. Sometimes adults disagree, and other people find it interesting. That's all. Like when Jerome and I fought over the basketball, and everyone crowded around?" "Something like that," she said, squeezing his hand. After dropping Matteo at school, Marcella checked her phone again. 57 missed calls. Over 300 text messages. And an email from Amélie Roche marked urgent. * Marcella, don't come to work today. Media circus. Taking reservations for your section has crashed our system. Call me ASAP. AR*. Her morning shift at Café Luna was no better. Customers lined up outside the door, many clearly there just to see the waitress who stood up to Dorian Kessler. Some offered high fives and solidarity. Others took surreptitious photos, whispering behind their hands. "It's madness," Elena, the cafe owner, told her during a rare quiet moment. "Someone offered me $500 for your schedule. I told them to get lost." "I'm so sorry," Marcella began, but Elena waved her off. "Don't apologize. That Kessler guy sounds like a real piece of work. But..." She hesitated. "I'm worried about you. Have you seen what he's doing?" Marcella's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Elena handed over her tablet, open to a financial news site. The headline made her blood run cold. Kessler Holdings acquires majority stake in Roche Restaurant Group. The article detailed how Dorian Kessler's investment firm had overnight purchased 62% of the restaurant group that owned the Armand, along with 6 other high-end establishments across Manhattan. "He bought the Armand?" Marcella whispered. "Because of me?" "It gets worse," Elena said grimly, scrolling down. A statement from Kessler Holdings appeared in a block quote. "We're excited to bring much-needed operational efficiency and customer service improvements to these fine establishments. Our first priority will be implementing rigorous staff training and accountability measures." The thinly veiled threat was obvious. "He's going to fire me," Marcella said, the realization like ice in her veins. "Can he do that? After the video went viral? Wouldn't that be retaliation? He's worth billions. He can do whatever he wants." Her phone rang. Amélie Roche. "Have you seen?" Amélie asked without preamble, her voice tight with stress. "Just now." "Amélie, I'm so sorry." "Stop apologizing. This isn't your fault. It's his wounded ego." She lowered her voice. "He's here now, with his team of lawyers and efficiency consultants. They're evaluating all staff performance records. He's really going to fire me." "Over my dead body," Amélie snapped. "My family built this restaurant. My name is still on the lease. He may own the parent company, but he'll have a fight on his hands." Marcella closed her eyes, suddenly overwhelmed. "I can't let you risk everything for me." "This isn't just about you anymore," Amélie said. "It's about all of us. Did you know the video has 30 million views now? You've become a symbol, Marcella. For everyone who's ever been talked down to, humiliated, made to feel small by someone with power. A symbol." The word felt too heavy for her shoulders. "I need to pick up Matteo from school. Can we talk later?" "Of course. Be careful, Marcella. Kessler plays dirty." How dirty, she discovered when she arrived at Matteo's school. The principal, Ms. Jackson, met her at the entrance, her expression grave. "Ms. Duarte, we need to speak privately." In her office, Ms. Jackson slid a document across the desk. "This arrived by courier an hour ago. Well, you should read it." It was a letter from the Educational Foundation that provided Mateo's scholarship to the private school, a scholarship Marcella could never have afforded on her own. After review of recent financial disclosures, we regret to inform you that Mateo Duarte's scholarship will be discontinued, effective immediately. Financial disclosures? I haven't made any disclosures, Marcella said, confusion giving way to horrified understanding. The foundation, who funds it? Ms. Jackson's silence was answer enough. Kessler, Marcella whispered. He's on the board, isn't he? He's the primary donor, Ms. Jackson admitted. But this is unprecedented. I've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. Until then, I want to assure you that Mateo's place is secure. But for how long? The question hung unspoken between them. Mateo was subdued on the walk home, sensing his mother's distress despite her efforts to hide it. Did I do something wrong? He asked finally. Is that why everyone's mad? Marcella stopped, kneeling to meet his eyes. No, Mijo. You've done nothing wrong. And no one is mad at you. Then why did Mr. Peterson give me this? He pulled a folded paper from his backpack, a printout of a social media post showing Marcella facing off with Kessler, with an ugly caption questioning her parenting. Fury rose in her throat. Who gave this to you? The computer teacher. He said I should know what my mom was doing while I was at school. Marcella's hands shook as she took the paper, crumpling it. Mr. Peterson was wrong to show you this. Very wrong. Are we in trouble, Mama? Are we going to have to move again? The fear in his voice broke something inside her. They'd moved 3 times in Mateo's short life, each time because she couldn't make ends meet. Each time promising it would be the last. No, she said with more conviction than she felt. We're not moving. We're going to stand our ground. But standing ground required solid footing, and by evening, Marcella's was crumbling. She returned from putting Mateo to bed to find an email from her student loan servicer. * Your application for hardship deferment has been denied. Full payment of $3,412, including penalties, is due within 72 hours to avoid further collection action. * The timing couldn't be a coincidence. Somehow, Kessler was accelerating her financial ruin. Her phone rang, another unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Ms. Duarte. A deep voice, cultured but warm. My name is Rashad Beaumont. I believe we need to talk. Marcella froze. Rashad Beaumont, the black billionaire philanthropist whose foundation built schools in developing countries. Whose face graced the cover of Time's most influential people issue. How did you get this number? She asked warily. His chuckle was sympathetic. The same way I suspect Dorian Kessler did. Money opens doors. The difference is my intentions. Which are? To help you. Dorian and I have history. What he's doing to you is unconscionable. Why would you care about a waitress? Because 30 years ago, my mother was a waitress, he said simply. And because what you did, speaking truth to power, matters. Marcella sank onto her couch, suddenly exhausted. He's going to destroy me, Mr. Beaumont. He's already started. Call me Rashad. And yes, he's certainly trying. That's why I'd like to meet. Tomorrow, if possible. I have work and Mateo. Bring Mateo. We'll meet wherever you're comfortable. She hesitated, suspicion warring with desperate hope. Why should I trust you? A fair question. Look me up. Call anyone who knows me. Then decide. He paused. Marcella, you're in a David versus Goliath situation. But remember, David won. After they hung up, Marcella did exactly that, researching Rashad Beaumont deep into the night. His philanthropic work seemed genuine. His feud with Kessler was well documented, stemming from a business deal where Kessler had allegedly stolen Beaumont's technology and pushed him out of a company they co-founded. At 2 a.m., her buzzer rang. Startled, she approached the intercom cautiously. Yes. Delivery for Marcella Duarte. I didn't order anything. It's from Dorian Kessler. Her blood ran cold. Leave it outside. After watching through the peephole to ensure the delivery person left, Marcella cracked open her door. A small box sat on her welcome mat, wrapped in black paper with a silver bow. She brought it inside, setting it on the kitchen counter as if it might explode. Using a knife, she carefully pried open the lid. Inside lay a single item, a waitress uniform exactly like the one she wore at the Armand, but shredded to ribbons. Pinned to it was a note in elegant handwriting. Asterisk your career, your reputation, your security, all is easily torn apart. Unless, asterisk. Unless what? The question tormented her as she lay sleepless, listening to Mateo's soft breathing from the next room, watching the ceiling as shadows played across it. Her phone pinged with a text. Asterisk meet me. Privately. We can end this. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office. Come alone. DK asterisk. An ultimatum from Kessler. A lifeline from Beaumont. Both powerful men with their own agendas, pulling her into a game where she hadn't asked to play. Dawn broke with Marcella no closer to a decision. As she prepared Mateo's lunch, a breaking news alert flashed across her phone. Restaurant staff walkout. Employees refused to work under Kessler management. The article showed Sophie, Remy, and a dozen other Armand employees standing outside the restaurant, holding signs reading "Respect workers," and "You can't buy decency." They were risking their livelihoods. For her. The realization hit her with physical force. This had grown beyond a personal battle. People were watching, taking sides, seeing in her confrontation something that resonated deeply with their own experiences. Her phone rang again. Amelie. They're firing everyone who didn't show up today, she said without preamble. Kessler's bringing in replacement staff. This is insanity, Marcella whispered. All because of one sentence. One true sentence, Amelie corrected. Truth is what frightens men like him most. After hanging up, Marcella stared at the shredded uniform on her counter, then at the texts from Kessler and Beaumont. Power versus power, with her caught in the middle. But maybe, she thought suddenly, that's exactly where she needed to be. She picked up her phone and made 2 calls, first to Beaumont, then to Kessler. I'll meet with both of you, she told Kessler, her voice steadier than she felt. But on my terms, not yours. You're hardly in a position to dictate terms, he scoffed. Maybe not. But I have something you want. And what's that? A way to end this that doesn't destroy us both. The silence that followed told her she'd struck a nerve. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its arrogance. Where and when? She named a location that would level the playing field, neutral ground where neither billionaire would have the advantage. As she hung up, Marcella felt a curious calm settle over her. Whatever happened tomorrow would change everything. The power imbalance between her and Kessler remained vast, but she was no longer facing him alone. The question was, would it be enough? Asterisk, what would you do if someone with unlimited resources targeted you? Would you fight back or try to make peace? And at what cost? Asterisk. The morning sun cast long shadows across Washington Square Park as Marcella approached the central fountain. She'd chosen this location carefully, public enough to feel safe, yet with enough morning quiet to allow for conversation. Mateo walked beside her, unusually solemn in his school uniform, his small hand gripping hers tightly. Remember what we talked about, she said gently. This is just a meeting. No one is going to hurt us. He nodded, but his eyes darted nervously around the park. Will the angry man be here? Yes. But so will a friend. She hoped that was true of Beaumont, at least. They reached the fountain 5 minutes before the agreed time. Marcella chose a bench with clear sight lines in all directions, positioned Matteo beside her, and waited. Rashad Beaumont arrived first, alone and on foot, a deliberate choice, she suspected, meant to put her at ease. In person, he was taller than she'd expected, his tailored suit understated but clearly expensive. His smile, however, was warm and genuine as he approached. "Ms. Duarte," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." She shook his hand, noting the firm but not overpowering grip. "This is my son, Matteo." Beaumont crouched to Matteo's level. "It's a pleasure to meet you, young man. I hear you're quite the student." Matteo's eyes widened. "How did you know that?" "I make it my business to know about exceptional people," Beaumont replied with a wink. A sleek black Maybach pulled up to the park's edge. Even from a distance, Marcella could see the tension in Dorian Kessler's posture as he emerged. Unlike Beaumont, he hadn't come alone. 2 men in dark suits flanked him, their eyes scanning the park with professional vigilance. "Bringing bodyguards to intimidate a waitress and her child," Beaumont murmured. "Classic Dorian." As Kessler approached, Marcella felt Matteo press against her side. She wrapped an arm around him protectively. "This wasn't the arrangement," Kessler said by way of greeting, glaring at Beaumont. "You said a private meeting." "I said I'd meet you both," Marcella corrected. "On my terms." "And you brought Rashad." Kessler's lip curled. "Attempting to leverage our history against me? Predictable." "Perhaps she simply recognizes an ally when she sees one," Beaumont replied mildly. Kessler's gaze shifted to Matteo, something calculating in his expression. "And you brought your son. Interesting strategy." "Not a strategy," Marcella said firmly. "This affects him too. Everything you've done, threatening his scholarship, having that teacher show him that horrible printout, it affects him." "I've done nothing of the sort," Kessler said, but the denial lacked conviction. "Save it, Dorian," Beaumont interjected. "We all know your playbook by now." Tension crackled between the 2 billionaires. Marcella could almost feel the weight of their shared history, the power struggle that had nothing to do with her yet had somehow engulfed her life. "Matteo," she said softly, "why don't you go watch the chess players for a few minutes? Stay where I can see you." After her son reluctantly moved to a nearby chess table, Marcella turned back to the men. "Let me be clear, I didn't ask for any of this. I was doing my job when Mr. Kessler decided to humiliate me publicly. I responded with one sentence, one true sentence, and somehow that's escalated into him buying a restaurant group, canceling my son's scholarship, and accelerating my student loans. The market moves in mysterious ways," Kessler said with false innocence. "Pure coincidence." "And the shredded uniform you sent to my home? The threatening note? Was that coincidence too?" Beaumont's expression darkened. "You threatened her at her home? With her child present?" "I sent a gift," Kessler shrugged. "How she interprets it is her business." "Enough," Marcella said, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. "This ends today." Both men turned to her, equally startled by her tone. "You've made your point, Mr. Kessler. You're powerful enough to ruin me. Congratulations. But ask yourself, what have you actually accomplished? The video has 50 million views now. You're being mocked on late-night television. Your company's stock dropped 7 points yesterday." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Kessler's face. "The public humiliation you're experiencing," she continued, "is self-inflicted. You chose to belittle me. You chose to escalate when I stood up for myself. And every retaliatory action has only made you look worse." "She's right," Beaumont added. "The damage to your reputation far exceeds any satisfaction you might get from crushing her." Kessler's jaw tightened. "So what do you propose? That I just walk away? Let her get away with disrespecting me in front of my associates?" Do you have any idea what that video has cost me? Cost you? Marcella couldn't contain her incredulity. Your net worth is $18 billion. Mine is negative 47,000 because of student loans. And you're talking to me about cost. Something in her words seemed to penetrate. Kessler glanced toward Matteo, then back at her. What do you want? He asked finally. Money? Is that why Rashad is here? To broker some extortion deal. I don't want your money, Marcella said firmly. I want 3 things. First, leave my son's scholarship alone. Second, stop interfering with my employment. And third. She took a deep breath. Acknowledge publicly that what you did was wrong. Kessler actually laughed. An apology? That's what this is about. Not just an apology, she clarified. Acknowledgement. Recognition that dignity isn't something your wealth can buy or take away. And if I refuse? Beaumont cleared his throat. Then I activate Plan B. Which is? Kessler's tone was dismissive, but his eyes betrayed concern. I've already purchased minority stakes in 3 companies where you're seeking board approval for acquisitions, Beaumont said casually. Enough to block your moves. I've also spoken with the Attorney General about certain irregularities in your recent financial disclosures. You're bluffing, Kessler snapped, but sweat had appeared on his brow despite the cool morning. Try me, Beaumont replied. You forget, Dorian, I know where all your bodies are buried. I helped you dig some of the graves. The 2 men stared at each other, years of shared history and animosity passing between them in silence. Marcella watched the exchange with a surreal sense of detachment. These titans were negotiating over her life as if it were just another business deal. The power imbalance that had seemed so insurmountable days ago now felt like a fulcrum on which something much larger balanced. There's another option, she said quietly. Both men turned to her. What happened between us has clearly struck a nerve with people. Workers being disrespected by those with power. It's a universal experience. What if we channeled this attention into something positive? Meaning? Kessler asked, skepticism evident. A joint initiative. The Respect Initiative. Funded by both of you, focused on workplace dignity and fair treatment across service industries. Beaumont's eyes lit up. Brilliant. I'd commit $50 million immediately. You can't be serious, Kessler scoffed. Turn a viral humiliation into a charity photo op? Not a photo op, Marcella countered. Real change. Policy reform. Training programs. Legal support for workers who face discrimination and harassment. And what do I get out of this? Redemption, she said simply. The chance to transform a PR disaster into a legacy you could actually be proud of. The word redemption seemed to land with unexpected weight. Something shifted in Kessler's expression, not softening exactly, but a crack in the armor of arrogance. The board is pressuring me to distance myself from this situation, he admitted reluctantly. My largest investors called yesterday, expressing concerns about my judgment. So this gives you a face-saving way out, Beaumont observed, while actually doing some good in the world. Novel concept for you, Dorian. Kessler shot him a withering look, then turned back to Marcella. And if I agree to this initiative, you'll make a statement that we've resolved our differences amicably. I'll acknowledge your commitment to positive change, she corrected. But I won't pretend what happened didn't happen. He considered this, his calculating mind visibly weighing options and outcomes. Mama. Matteo had returned, slipping his hand into hers. Are you still fighting with the angry man? The simple question cut through the tension like a knife. Kessler looked at the boy, really looked at him, perhaps seeing for the first time not a prop or a pressure point, but a child concerned for his mother. No, Kessler said, surprising everyone. We're not fighting anymore. He hesitated, then extended his hand to Matteo. "I'm Dorian. I'm sorry if I scared you." Matteo studied the offered hand suspiciously before giving it the briefest of shakes. "You made my mom sad." "I know," Kessler admitted. "That was wrong of me." The simple acknowledgement, spoken to a child rather than the cameras or lawyers, felt more genuine than any public statement could have. Marcella caught Beaumont's eye, and he gave her an almost imperceptible nod of approval. 100 million, Kessler said abruptly. 50 from each of us, to launch this Respect initiative. With independent governance, not controlled by either of us. With Marcella on the board, Beaumont added, as a voice for those the initiative aims to help. Kessler hesitated, then nodded. Fine. And the scholarship program stays intact. And your employment status? That's between you and Amélie Roche. I'll instruct my team to reverse the acquisition of her restaurant group. And the student loans? Marcella pressed. A ghost of his former arrogance returned. I had nothing to do with that. But... He sighed. As part of the initiative, we could establish an education fund for service workers pursuing degree completion. You could be the first recipient. It wasn't a direct admission, but it was close enough. We have a framework, Beaumont said, extending his hand to Kessler. Lawyers can work out the details. After a moment's hesitation, Kessler shook it. I want a joint press release by end of day. Get ahead of the narrative. Speaking of narratives, Beaumont replied, there's the small matter of that viral video. Kessler's expression darkened again. What about it? It needs context. Your public acknowledgement that Ms. Duarte's response was justified. Absolutely not. Dorian, Beaumont said quietly, sometimes the only way forward is through humility. For a moment, it seemed Kessler would explode again. His face flushed, his hands clenched. But then, unexpectedly, he looked at Matteo again, and something in his rigid posture softened. One statement, he said finally. Prepared by my team, approved by all parties. Fair enough, Marcella agreed. As they finalized the broad strokes of their agreement, Marcella felt a curious lightness, not just relief that the immediate threat to her family had passed, but something deeper. She had stood her ground against seemingly insurmountable odds and found a path forward that might help others facing similar power imbalances. The meeting concluded with tentative handshakes all around. As Kessler turned to leave, he paused, looking back at Marcella. That sentence you said, he remarked, about buying meals but not respect. Where did that come from? My mother, Marcella replied. She cleaned houses for wealthy families for 30 years. She always said dignity was the one thing no one could take from you unless you gave it away. Something unreadable passed across Kessler's face, recognition, perhaps, or a distant memory. She was right, he said simply, and walked away. Beaumont stayed behind briefly, his expression thoughtful as they watched Kessler's car pull away. You know, he said, in all the years I've known Dorian Kessler, I've never seen anyone reach him like that. Not lawyers, not other billionaires, certainly not a waitress with nothing but the truth on her side. I didn't set out to reach him, Marcella said. I just refused to be diminished. Beaumont smiled. And that, Ms. Duarte, is precisely why this initiative might actually work. He checked his watch. I have calls to make to get this rolling. We'll be in touch soon. As he walked away, Matteo tugged at her hand. Mama? Are we still in trouble? Marcella knelt beside him, brushing his hair from his forehead. No, Joe. I think we're going to be okay. She looked toward the park entrance, where a small crowd of reporters had gathered, apparently alerted to the meeting. But I think our lives are going to be different from now on. Different how? She thought about the Respect Initiative, about her place on its board, about the opportunity to speak for those whose voices were so often ignored. Different in ways that matter, she said. Ways that might help a lot of people. As they walked toward the waiting press, Marcella's phone buzzed with notifications. The hashtag You Can't Buy Decency had evolved into hashtag The Respect Initiative, already trending nationally. Someone had leaked the broad strokes of their agreement. The power of a single sentence, spoken with conviction in the face of intimidation, had somehow sparked something larger than herself. The restaurant had fallen silent that night, but now the world was listening. And Marcella Duarte, once just a waitress trying to make ends meet, found herself with a new and unexpected platform, one built not on wealth or privilege, but on the simple unassailable truth that dignity was indeed priceless. What sentence would you have the courage to speak, even if it meant risking everything you've worked for? When does standing up for your dignity outweigh the potential consequences? 6 months later, Marcella stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel, adjusting the microphone with slightly trembling hands. Behind her, a banner stretched across the stage, The Respect Initiative, Dignity is Priceless. The audience before her represented a cross-section of American society, restaurant workers in their best clothes seated alongside corporate executives and policymakers, united by a common purpose that had seemed impossible half a year ago. When I spoke those words to Mr. Kessler, Marcella began, her voice steady despite her nerves, I never imagined I'd be standing here today. I was just a waitress protecting my dignity. Now I'm part of a movement that's changing how we think about respect in the workplace. In the front row, Mateo sat between Mrs. Alvarez and Amélie Roche, beaming with pride. Beside them, more surprisingly, sat Dorian Kessler, still intimidating in his bespoke suit, but visibly changed from the man who had berated her 6 months earlier. The transformation hadn't been immediate or easy. The first weeks after their Washington Square Park meeting had been tense, with lawyers from both Billionaire's camps hammering out details while social media continued to dissect every aspect of their confrontation. Kessler's public statement had been carefully worded but ultimately effective. My interaction with Ms. Duarte reflected a failure on my part to recognize the dignity inherent in every person, regardless of their role or position. Her response was justified and has prompted important self-reflection. The Respect Initiative represents my commitment to ensuring others don't experience similar treatment. It wasn't exactly a heartfelt apology, but coming from a man notorious for never admitting fault, it had made headlines. The Respect Initiative had launched with $100 million in funding, but its impact quickly outgrew its founders' expectations. Within weeks, other wealthy individuals and corporations had pledged additional support, bringing the total to over $300 million. More importantly, concrete changes were already taking effect. In just 6 months, Marcella continued, we've helped establish fair treatment policies in over 500 restaurants across the country. Our legal aid fund has supported 73 workers in cases of workplace harassment or discrimination. And our scholarship program has enabled 94 service industry employees to continue their education without the crushing burden of debt. The audience applauded warmly. Marcella caught Rashad Beaumont's eye from his seat near the stage. He nodded encouragingly. But numbers don't tell the full story, she said. This initiative is about changing culture, about recognizing that dignity isn't a luxury or a privilege. It's a basic human right that belongs to everyone, whether they're serving meals or running multinational corporations. Her gaze moved to Kessler, who met it without flinching. Their relationship had evolved into something neither of them could have predicted, not friendship exactly, but a wary mutual respect born of their shared work on the initiative. 3 months after their confrontation, he had asked to meet with her privately. Why did you really do it? She had asked him over coffee at a small cafe far from the media's watchful eyes. Fund the initiative, make the statement, reverse course so completely? He had considered the question carefully before answering. My father was a janitor, he had said finally, at a manufacturing plant in Cleveland. For 30 years, he cleaned up after people who treated him like he was invisible. I swore I'd never be like them, that when I made it, I'd be different. A bitter smile had crossed his face. Somewhere along the way, I became exactly what I despised. It wasn't an excuse, but it was context, a glimpse of humanity beneath the arrogance that had surprised her. Now, as Marcella prepared to introduce the initiative's new workplace training program, she reflected on how completely her life had changed. She still worked at the Armand 2 nights a week, by choice rather than necessity, while completing her accounting degree. The rest of her time was devoted to the initiative, traveling around the country to speak about workplace dignity and helping implement programs that made tangible differences in people's lives. Today, we're launching our most ambitious program yet, she announced. The Dignity Framework, a comprehensive training and certification system for businesses committed to creating respectful workplace environments. And I'm proud to announce that our first 20 corporate partners represent over 2 million employees nationwide. More applause, accompanied by a standing ovation from the service workers section. Marcella saw tears on some of their faces, people who, like her, had experienced the humiliation of being treated as less than by those with power over their livelihoods. We've all heard the phrase power corrupts, she continued when the applause died down. But I've learned that power also reveals. It shows us who people truly are, not just those who wield it, but those who face it. 6 months ago, I was revealed as someone who values dignity above security. Mr. Kessler was revealed as someone capable of growth and change, despite his initial reaction. And all of you, she gestured to the audience, have been revealed as people who recognize that how we treat each other matters profoundly. After her speech, as attendees mingled during the reception, Marcella found herself momentarily alone at the edge of the ballroom, watching Matteo charm a group of corporate executives with his earnest questions about their businesses. He's going to be formidable when he grows up, came Dorian Kessler's voice from behind her. Already has more social intelligence than most of my board members. Marcella smiled despite herself. He's always been good with people. Gets that from his father. How is Carlos doing? I heard the initiative helped fund his treatment center. The rehab program is working this time, she said cautiously. 3 months sober. He's seeing Matteo twice a month now. Kessler nodded. Good. Family matters. That's new, coming from you. A lot of things are new for me these days. He gestured toward the crowded room, including standing in a room where half the people still think I'm the villain in this story. And the other half. The other half are reserving judgment, waiting to see if this redemption arc is genuine or just good PR. And is it? She couldn't help asking. Genuine. He considered the question with unexpected seriousness. I think it's becoming more genuine every day. The work changes you. Hearing the stories, seeing the impact. It's harder to maintain certain perspectives. Before she could respond, Rashad Beaumont joined them, champagne flute in hand. Quite a success, this little gathering, he observed. 7 senators, 2 presidential candidates, and CEOs from half the Fortune 50. Not bad for a movement started by a waitress with a sharp tongue. And funded by 2 billionaires with competing egos, Marcella added dryly. Both men chuckled, the former tension between them noticeably diminished after months of reluctant collaboration. Speaking of competing, Beaumont said, Dorian, I heard Tech Futures is considering our dignity framework for their worldwide operations. Weren't you trying to acquire them last year? Still am, Kessler admitted. Though my approach has evolved. Meaning I'm including commitment to the framework as part of the acquisition terms. Turns out treating people with basic dignity is actually good for the bottom line. Who knew? The irony wasn't lost on any of them. As the evening progressed, Marcella found herself drawn into conversations with people from across the social spectrum, from housekeepers and bartenders to politicians and philanthropy directors. The common thread was a recognition that something fundamental was shifting in how society viewed the relationship between power, wealth, and human dignity. Near the end of the event, A young waitress serving drinks approached Marcella tentatively. "Ms. Duarte? I just wanted to say, that video changed my life. I was ready to quit after years of being treated like I was nothing. But seeing you stand up to him," she glanced nervously toward Kessler across the room, "it gave me courage to demand better treatment at my job." "And did you get it?" Marcella asked. The young woman smiled. "I did. We all did. My manager actually took our complaints seriously after your video went viral. Said he didn't want to be the next Kessler." Similar stories had reached Marcella from across the country: waitstaff, retail workers, home health aides, all finding their voices after years of swallowing humiliation as part of the job. Later that night, after tucking an exhausted Mateo into bed in their new apartment, modest but in a safe neighborhood with good schools, Marcella sat on her small balcony overlooking the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a text from Amelie. "Brilliant speech tonight. The Armand isn't the same without you full-time, but what you're doing matters more. Proud to know you. Amelie had become a key ally in the initiative's restaurant programs, using her influence in the industry to bring other establishments on board. The Armand itself had become a model for the dignity framework, with working conditions and staff treatment that set new standards for the industry. As Marcella replied to the text, another notification appeared, a social media alert for #YouCan'tBuyDecency, a hashtag that continued to resurface whenever new incidents of wealth privilege or worker mistreatment hit the news. The latest trending post showed a split-screen image. On one side, the original viral video of her confrontation with Kessler. On the other, a photo from tonight's event showing them standing together at the podium, announcing a new phase of the initiative. The caption read, "Sometimes one sentence can change everything. 6 months ago versus tonight. #dignity is priceless. #the respect initiative *. The post had already been shared over 30,000 times. Marcella scrolled through some of the comments. Never seen a better example of speaking truth to power actually working. Still can't believe Kessler changed. Respect to both of them. My boss literally changed our workplace policies because of this movement. That waitress is my hero. Standing ovation for Marcella Duarte. The surreal nature of it all washed over her again. How one moment of courage, one refusal to be diminished, had catalyzed something so much larger than herself. The David versus Goliath story had resonated because it was, in essence, everyone's story, the universal experience of facing power with nothing but truth as a weapon. Her phone rang, an unknown number. Normally she would have ignored it, but something made her answer. "Ms. Duarte." A woman's voice, hesitant but determined. "My name is Jennifer Liu. I'm a server at a restaurant in Seattle. Something happened tonight that I think you should know about." As Marcella listened to yet another story of dignity asserted and respect demanded, she realized that the true power of what had happened 6 months ago wasn't in the viral video or the initiative or even the policy changes. It was in the permission it had given people to value themselves, to recognize that dignity wasn't a function of wealth or status, but an inherent human right. "What should I do?" Jennifer asked after relating how a customer had berated her in terms eerily similar to Kessler's attack. "What do you think is right?" Marcella countered gently. "I think I deserve better. We all do." "Then you've already taken the first step." After they hung up, Marcella remained on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker like stars. 6 months ago, she had been a waitress struggling to make ends meet, swallowing daily indignities to provide for her son. Now she was still a waitress, part-time by choice, but also a spokesperson, an advocate, a symbol of something powerful enough to unite billionaires and busboys in common cause. The path hadn't been smooth. There had been backlash, threats, attempts to discredit her. Kessler's transformation, while significant, remained incomplete, his fundamental nature still shaped by decades of privilege and power. But the movement they had inadvertently created had developed a momentum beyond any individual's control. Tomorrow would bring more meetings, more programs to implement, more stories to amplify. The work was far from finished. But tonight, Marcella allowed herself to simply appreciate how far they had come, from a moment of conflict in a restaurant to a ballroom full of people committed to changing how dignity was recognized and respected in American society. Her mother had been right all along. Dignity was the one thing no one could take from you unless you gave it away. What she hadn't mentioned was that sometimes, by refusing to surrender your own dignity, you could help others reclaim theirs. As Marcella finally went inside, she passed Mateo's room and paused, watching him sleep peacefully. Whatever world he grew up in would be shaped, in some small way, by what had happened that night at the Armand, by one sentence spoken with conviction when it would have been easier to stay silent. "You can buy the meal, sir, but you'll never buy respect." 12 words that had frozen a restaurant. 12 words that continued to echo, changing lives far beyond anything Marcella could have imagined when she first spoke them. Sometimes, she reflected as she closed Mateo's door, the most powerful act isn't confronting wealth or privilege directly, it's simply refusing to let it diminish your humanity. And in that refusal, creating space for something new to grow. When was the last time you stood up for your dignity, even when it was difficult? Has someone's courage ever inspired you to find your own voice? What one sentence would you speak to change your world? Don't forget to subscribe, share and like for more heartwarming stories like you.